to ask for the first one because I'm never quite sure if I've shown it to myself or shown it to
Recording in progress.
Highlight that. So basically, by establishing these local partnerships, the village ensures that the community tourism project is well supported. It can remain sustainable, or has a better chance of remaining sustainable, and it's beneficial to all the stakeholders who want to be involved. Okay, so I'm just going to stop there. I just wanted to show you an example of how that can look like in practical terms. Okay, so we need to set clear goals and objectives for our community tourism projects, and these goals should align with the needs and aspirations of the local community, ensuring that tourism development is beneficial and relevant to what they want to actually achieve. So how do we understand, this is the next question, how do we understand what the community's needs and aspirations actually are? So we're going to look at another PowerPoint. So there's a few PowerPoints today that we're going to go through. And this one's really, I'm trying to focus on, well, this PowerPoint is hopefully focusing on setting goals and objectives for our community tourism project. Because we want to really make sure that it aligns with everyone's vision and viewpoint on this. So the first question, if it works, there we go. So how do we do this? Where do we start? Well, the first thing, and we touched on this yesterday towards the end, like a community assessment. We can conduct surveys and interviews to understand what the community needs are, what their aspirations are, and what concerns they have regarding tourism. And that's important too to cover. We need to be aware early on of any particular concerns or issues that they have, so they can be dealt with. Need to discuss economic needs, cultural values, and environmental concerns, and any social dynamics that there are. And we can organize focus group discussions, which are separate discussions with different segments of the community, maybe more marginalized, generally sections of the community, like youth, women, elders, business owners, to gather those diverse perspectives, because we don't want to marginalize any one sector of the community, because then that becomes like a division within the community, which can only cause problems. We want to be as inclusive as possible, and it might be necessary to have those separate focus group discussions with just individual groups, because if they are marginalized, they might feel uncomfortable in a more general setting discussing things, where if it's just with their peers, it's a little easier for people to discuss. So hopefully by this time we already have our resource inventory, which is the USPs, the unique selling points we talked about yesterday. Again, and we can identify and document basically the community's natural assets, like the landscape that's there that people would want to come and see, the wildlife, maybe it's unique wildlife, or some wildlife activity that it might be interesting for people, and natural resources as well. We can catalogue the cultural heritage, and that's not just sites, that it does involve historical sites, but it could be traditions, it could be festivals, it could be crafts, it could be dances, anything like that that's particularly cultural to that community. It could be cuisine. And we can also assess the skills, the talents, and the expertise of community members that can be leveraged for tourism. So we can need to look at, it's fine saying, well, we have a very unique cuisine, but do we actually have people that can produce that for tourists? That can produce the crafts, maybe it's textiles, maybe it's basket weaving, whatever. We need to identify people that can actually do this and have workshops for tourists, maybe just making it and selling stuff for souvenirs. So one of the things we can do is a SWOT analysis with the community, and I feel most of you probably know or at least heard of a SWOT analysis. It's where you just like identify the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats to you know, and this chart actually sets it up. I found this online. It kind of like identifies it quite nicely. You know, basically, we want to identify the community strengths that can be highlighted in tourism projects. We can recognize the weaknesses or challenges that need addressing. We can look for opportunities in the tourism market that align with the community's assets, and we can identify potential threats to the community's environment, culture, or economy that tourism might make worse. In fact, and this is just a useful tool or chart that we can use. As I said, I'm sure most of you like have done this at some point or been involved in training where they've done it. You know, and it's just good if you're with the community, you can have this chart up and you can just have open questions and ask them what they feel, so you can get that feedback immediately and box it up there. So once we've done that, we need to really set clear and achievable goals and then align them with the community's needs and their aspirations as well, which we've identified a lot of those maybe through the SWOT analysis. So creating those goals is another one of those charts that, again, I'm sure you've come across the SMART chart, where you're basically looking at, you know, like the goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. But the first thing we should really think about trying to do is like creating a vision statement. This can just be a useful kind of like tool. It should be quite simple, but just to like get everyone together in the shared vision, if you like, for what you know you're aiming to do within the community and your project. You know, organizations tend to have like mission statements, particularly NGOs, which is kind of like it's like little snippets. So if people look at the mission statement, they'll understand what that organization is all about. It's a similar idea. So it's like a vision of where we want to be. And it basically kind of captures the long-term aspirations of the community for tourism development, reflecting community values, desired outcomes, and overall directions. We're going to look at one in later on in this PowerPoint, so you can see what one might look like. When we're talking about SMART goals, you know, like specific goals might be like, you know, they should be clear and detailed. Things like, you know, we want to increase ecotourism by 20% in 2 years or whatever. They should be measurable, and measurable goals should be like quantifiable, and that should be something like, you know, to create 50 new jobs in the tourism sector, community tourism, within the first year. So it's something that's very specific number that you're aiming to do. But they should be realistic, you know, and that depends on the situation. So it should be achievable or attainable, as it says on the chart here. So we need to set realistic goals within the community's capacity and resources to achieve. And we don't want to set unattainable goals or goals that we clearly don't think are going to be not achievable, because then that will just, you know, once those aren't met, that will kind of like create concern amongst the community, particularly that we're not actually reaching the goals, we're not developing as fast as we should. So every goal we identify should be definitely we consider to be realistic and attainable. It should be relevant to what we're trying to do. It should address the community's needs and aspirations. You know, maybe contributing to economic, social, and environmental improvements. And it should be, you know, we should have a clear timeline as well, or time frame for each goal, aiding in planning and maintaining momentum. Again, that comes back to being realistic and making sure that what we're doing is attainable. So the next step, as I was saying, is we need to align those goals and community needs and aspirations with, and that might be like with the economic goals, social goals, environmental goals, and cultural goals. You know, if we're talking about economic goals, as I said, it might be something like creating 50 new jobs in local tourism enterprises within the first year. It could also, like, you know, be something to do with income generation. Aim to increase community income from tourism, such as average household income by 15% or something through tourism activities throughout the next 3 years. Cultural goals could be things that involve cultural preservation or cultural exchange. Things like establish a cultural center to showcase local heritage within 2 years. Depends on your project, whatever your specific community project is. If it's cultural exchange, like we discussed, maybe it's to host, 10 cultural exchange events annually to promote mutual understanding with other organizations in the local vicinity. So you can create kind of a network as well as like potential training support. Environmental goals might, be connected to conservation or sustainable practices. Things like based wildlife conservation program by the end of the first year, or achieve zero waste from tourism activities, or recycling program or something like whatever that is connected to the environment and sustainability of the site. And again, social goals, that could involve community engagement. So, initially you might just have a small pocket of the community that wants to be involved in community tourism, but maybe you want to 80% of the community households in tourism. So to spread that kind of wealth, so it's like a slow activity over the first year to increase it. Or it could also be, connected to education and training. Goals like offer training programs for 50 community members in hospitality and tourism management within the next 2 years. So, you're increasing the capacity of the participants in the community. So once we've done all that, we need to actually put it into action and develop an action plan. And this is like in those of you that have done the project management or project development course that I've run, this would be like the work breakdown structure, basically. So it's you're breaking down each goal into specific actions and tasks. You can assign responsibilities and set deadlines. For example, like for job creation, actions might include identifying potential tourism-related business opportunities, to conduct skills training workshops, or maybe provide microloans for startups or something like that, or identify where people might get them. Resource allocation, you can identify necessary resources that you need, like funding, human resources, and materials, ensuring efficient and equitable allocation of those. But this is both things. This is like things that you need. It's also like, to identify a list of resources you already have. And again, that's something that we do a lot in project management, identifying the resources we have, and then kind of like looking at what we're missing, and then we can identify that as well. We need to develop a system for regular monitoring and evaluation of project impacts, including progress reports, community meetings, and surveys to gather feedback. Because what we don't want to do is to just like have a meeting, say this is all happening, and then leave people isolated. We need to be transparent and continue that conversation as much as we can, and adjust the action plans as needed based on monitoring results as the project or the first year goes on. Engaging stakeholders is another important aspect. We want to ensure that all relevant stakeholders, including community members, local businesses, government agencies, and NGOs, are involved in the goal setting process. And this is why, again, if we were to have this kickoff meeting, if you like, you should invite as many relevant people as possible that could and should be involved in that, who might benefit from it as well in the long run. So you can get those varied viewpoints. Maintain open and transparent communication with all stakeholders about the goals, the plans, the progress to build. This kind of builds trust, and it keeps everyone informed and engaged. And a lot of the time, people are transparent, engaged, and informed about what's going on, then they'll focus more on making it a success, because they'll see that they're really valued. And then you should establish partnerships with external organizations, as we said, that can provide support, expertise, or funding as well, such as environmental NGOs, tourism boards who can help with marketing support, and development agencies, capacity building. And the point of doing all of
Thank you,
this is
DA.
once you get all this down, you can see the progress. You're creating this shared vision throughout the community that everyone can understand and agree on, hopefully, and then move forward. So if we look at what this might look like, and this is just another hypothetical project. So, we're just going to look at a rural community in Africa that wants
Ciao,
to
salam
develop
doro,
a
DA.
tourism
Ciao.
project. And this project is centered around their cultural heritage and their beautiful landscape. So the first thing we discussed just now was setting up a vision statement. I just want to give you an example, a vision statement that this community sets up, this hypothetical community. Like, we want to develop a sustainable tourism model that celebrates, our cultural heritage, conserves our natural environment, and improves the quality of life for all community members. It's quite a simple, straightforward vision statement that will help people understand exactly what the joint vision overall should be. Now, that might change for specific projects. You add things to it, but this is just an example of just like keeping it succinct and clear. We want to talk about economic goals. So for this particular example of a project, their economic goals are to create 40 new jobs related to cultural tourism within the first year, to increase the average income from tourism activities by 25% over 3 years. They identified the cultural goals as they want to establish a community centre within 2 years. And that's going to highlight the local traditions and the crafts. It's somewhere to display stuff. And they want to organise 12 cultural exchange events annually, and those could be, like different organisations, different
the region. And then if we talk about environmental goals, they decided they wanted to implement a community-based wildlife conservation program by the end of the first year, and that just to help protect some aspect of their environment. And they wanted to achieve a 50% reduction in waste from tourism activities within 3 years. So, there's lots of different things that could be done for environmental projects. It depends on the specific needs of your particular landscape and environment around you. Maybe it's a replanting thing, maybe it's a preservation thing for animals or whatever. And social goals, that might involve, 90% of households in tourism planning and activities within the first year. So you're increasing it, like maybe again, as we said yesterday, like starting off with a small amount of people, but you want to actually start to involve more people. And that's the way that's going to happen is for your project to be more successful, so more people can see that people are making income from it. So within the first year, if you've had tourists and they see that, like, Tim Healing's family's got a homestay and they're making money, then other families will want to do the same thing too. And they want to offer training programs for 150 community members in tourism, hospitality management within 2 years. Obviously, this is quite a sizable number. Again, that would depend on your particular community. Maybe it's a small community, so it'd be much less. So basically, by following this approach, the community can develop clear, achievable objectives aligned to their needs and aspirations, ensuring the success and sustainability of their community projects. And the reason I said we do this is to create this shared vision, but you're also kind of creating a kind of business plan, if you like. So everyone can have like a shared idea and a viewpoint of where the direction of the project is going. So, effective stakeholder
involvement and collaboration, as we've just seen, is crucial to the success and sustainability of community tourism projects in general. Um, and by engaging various stakeholders in planning and decision making, it fosters a sense of ownership and empowerment within the community, ensuring that tourism initiatives are inclusive, equitable, and aligned with the local values and needs. If they are not aligned with local values and needs, it will fail. Um, and we can say that, like, if we looked at the Aksu Jabagli case study yesterday that we did, there were issues definitely that happened with the project. Started very small, it kind of grew too much, too quickly, and so there were issues that, and local people felt that they weren't being involved uh, at an early enough stage, uh, so they weren't kind of able to participate initially. They were more reacting then to issues rather than being proactive and planning ahead. So identifying key stakeholders involves engaging community members, including residents and diverse demographic groups and local leaders, collaborating with local and national government agencies for policy support and resources, partnering with NGOs focused on conservation, community development, education, health, maybe, again, it all depends on your project, involving local businesses and tourism operators, and engaging maybe academia as well. Maybe there's local universities that can help with different aspects, research institutions for research training and capacity building support. So I'm going to come out of here and put up another chart so we can see.
ያናገር ነው እያሱ እኮ ያናገር እኮ እኔ ነው ልይ ይሄ እዚህ ጋር የሆነች ነገር እየሰራው ሶሪ ብሎ ነው